and welcome to TDU Live. This week we have a lot to get through. We have a lot to go over, so this one probably is going to go a little bit longer than normally. The first thing that we want to do is we want to go over our TDU Challenge winner with the Mr. Bean. And then I want to take you on a walkthrough of the lighting test that I did for the interior swimming pool. So first things first, I just kind of want to go through all the submissions that we got and all of the just really amazing artwork that we had. And make myself smaller, make this. So this isn't one of the renders, this is one of the references that I popped up here. So I just kind of want to step through each one of these. So this is Antonio Calderon, did a really nice work where we have Mr. Bean being integrated into the Blade Runner scene. He did a brilliant job getting the wet skin, some really great fill values, some specular highlights in the fill values. We've got Calabaza Muele with this really cool scene. And by the way, for the record, you guys absolutely blew us away with your creativity, with your lighting skill, and with your submissions. We were just floored with what you were able to do. So this scene, I thought it was really cool the way that we're getting a lot of focus on Mr. Bean's eyes. We're getting some good shaping around the chin. We're getting that red rim. We're really feeling that environment. He really feels a part of this space. And also the camera angle on this one and the focal length on the lens is beautiful. Like, it's so wide and warpy and weird. I really, really enjoyed this guy. Then we've got Jay Lopez's Mr. Bean on Mars. Really great integration. Lots of, again, like, this is just does a really good job of helping tell a story and getting the character and getting the audience to really engage them. And this was like something that I never thought I would see him in. It's just like, it kind of changes that silly expression that he has into something else on this planet. And I just like the integration's really good. These highlights on the side are really good. They're really matching the plate well. And it's just a really, really skillful art job. Jonah Pine did this. It reminds me of very like film noir look, where it's like this high contrast. We got the streaking window blinds going across them. You can see we've got this window blind being artistically shaped right around his eye, so it hits that, and on this side too. Just really well done. And then just some simple stuff like the gradient in the background here, and also the rim light hitting him on this side. Just all around good lighting, good craft. Juan Martin. It's really funny. Again, I don't know why everyone was putting Mr. Bean in space, but I'm all for it. It was very cool, and it was just like this little bit of his face behind the UFO steering wheel, and just very cool stuff. Katerina has this like creepy hand on the shoulders thing. She did a really good job of getting the hands to read and make it and setting him in an environment and making it feel like something sinister was going on. Love Paulo's aspect ratio here, the super vertical, kind of wacky. I know that you use the Alfred Hitchcock reference lighting, and you're kind of nailing it here with that. Just like absolutely perfect in terms of using the aspect ratio, the lighting, and everything to kind of just tell this whimsical, wonky story. Pasqua, you're set up to something like it's so painterly, this one. It almost feels like I said, like a Salvador Dali painting or something. It just feels very much like layered, like things are stepping back in space. And it's just so cool, like the way that there's also like depth of field. There's also just good lighting and good shaping on him. There's some nice rim. You're picking up his hairs. You're getting some nice specular values in there. Just a lot of really pretty stuff going on. And then we got Sash with the Joker. Just like, it just makes me smile. It just makes me so happy to see this stuff, because again, this is something I never would have thought of doing for him, but you did a really beautiful job of getting the Joker's hero colors in there, that emerald green and the purple and the red. And then you did a really nice job of balancing the skin to make it look like that nice powdery white, and then the blacks around the eyes. It's all like working together really well, and the colors are balancing really nicely, and everything's playing together really well. Vedat did this really beautiful work from No Country for Old Men. This matches the reference really, really well. And I thank you for sliding the chain link fence over. That was my weird pickiness thing. You got the eyes being lit really well. You got good shaping coming across here, just really integrating into the scene well, and just lots and lots and lots of good stuff going on. The biggest thing, and I can't say this enough between Jasmine and I, was just how, again, I hate to use the word, keep using the words blown away by your submissions, but we absolutely were. We hemmed and hawed for a long time over which one we would pick as a winner, because it felt really awful that we had to just pick one of these. But we went ahead and did it, and I don't want to keep dragging it on for too long. So go ahead, and without further ado, we would like to congratulate Antonio Calderon as the winner of our first ever TDU lighting challenge with the Mr. Bean character. And like I said, this work stood out to us because it really checked all the boxes for us, right? It told the story through lighting, beautiful shaping, an amazing job of matching the reference and getting that wet character look, which is, I can attest, is so hard. It's a balance of light, it's a balance of the shaders, and it's just, Antonio did such a brilliant job of understanding the scene, understanding the light, and understanding the way that the light interacted with the character, and just some like really subtle details of this like out of focus rain in the front, just some really nice specular in the jacket here. Like I said, having lit it myself, I know the specular on the jacket can be a little bit wonky. But just like this one really, if like I could use this as an example of lighting in the courses of creating good shaping, directing the viewer's eye, and telling a story. And so I just want to commend Antonio for a brilliant job. You've won the $100 Amazon gift card. We will figure out how to get that to you. And but I do want to, I also wanted to throw out some honorable mentions as well, because like I said, there was just a lot of really beautiful work. Again, Sash, with the color scheme that you put together is just so gorgeous. And like the blues behind him, making him pop forward. It was just like all from top to bottom, this was just really great. You just needed a little bit more eye work, and then it would push it just over the finish line. Mr. Lopez, this one was beautifully integrated. It was really cool. We just felt that the lighting and Antonio's helped tell the story a little better, and really it was also because he was a little bit smaller on screen, and the focal point was really kind of off to the side. And also, like, some of these wrap highlights are getting a little bit bright. His face is still feeling a little bit dirty on the front side, and we could get a little bit more saturation to match these characters' colors. And then just some other little things, like there's like a little, it looks like a matte line around the outside too. But I want to tell you all, and Calabaza, I loved this, the whole scene that you set up, the wonkiness of the camera. Like I said, everything worked together really well. So we wanted to let you guys know that the work that you created absolutely can go on your demo reels. What you've done is mind-blowing in such a short amount of time. And we can't say how proud we are of all of you. The progress that you made is incredible. And like I said, just absolutely blew us away. So congratulations, Antonio, and congratulations to all of you, because now all of you guys have got some really cool work to put on your demo reels. And that's what we're here to do. Okay, so now I want to move on to talking about, hey, look at all the congratulations. You guys are so great. And yeah, and Jasmine, yeah, as Jasmine said in the comments down there, it was incredibly hard to choose the winner. We've gone back and forth quite a bit. So yeah, so let me bounce over to we're gonna do the lighting walkthrough now. Let me get that loaded up here on the screen, and we're gonna talk through. Wrong one. And then we're gonna talk through that. Just so you all, I'm also on in California here, so there's a lot of at my sister-in-law's house. So we've got a lot of kid stuff going on in the background. I'm visiting some nieces and nephews today, so that's why you're seeing some of that. Okay, so let's get into this guy here. All right, so this is the scene that we're going to be doing the lighting walkthrough on. This is one of our TurboSquid models. This was the interior pool scene. So with this, my goal was I wanted to do a few things. The biggest one that I thought about was I wanted to work pretty quickly and do something within a 24-hour time period. That was one of my goals that I set for myself. Like, how do I light this thing very quickly. And again, here's the base model. This is what we got from TurboSquid. This model was done by 3D Moliere, and you can see it's pretty straightforward, pretty clean geometry. The setup of it was this nice, bright, sunny day. And we have this for you all that are TDU students. We've got this inside the Environments for Lighting Artists, Environment Lighting for Animated Films course. You can see if you just scroll down in there now, under the downloadable assets, you'll see the swimming pool, the Lamborghini, and the Capitol building. So if you go into the swimming pool, you just scroll down and you can download the assets there. And you can see we've got the links to the TurboSquid and 3D Moliere's sites. And we've got it set up with basic Arnold shaders. We've got a Maya file for Maya users and FBX and OBJ for others. So like I said, I wanted to do it within 24 hours. I wanted to completely flip the mood of the original scene. So I wanted it to be kind of dark and moody, and I wanted to feel like this thing was abandoned and nobody had been in there for a very long time. And I just wanted this window light coming through. And then I also wanted to add this element of graffiti. So, and not just like a little graffiti, I wanted it to be like layered, like graffiti on top of graffiti on top of graffiti. Also with a little bit of water in there, I always like to add a little bit of caustic lighting. So now we are in our 3D scene. So when you download it, this is what you'll see out of the gate. We've got the swimming pool, we've got the water, we've got these dummy characters in there that are just meant for some scale reference. I went ahead and just started deleting those. You can see those off to the side. Oh, I should say this too, that this scene was the original download. So these naming conventions aren't what you all are going to be seeing. We Eduardo or Calabaza Muele was kind enough to go through and clean up the file. So what I am dealing with in this file isn't exactly what you'll be seeing in terms of like the names and the grouping of things. Yours is going to be much, much cleaner. And that was another reason why I wanted to do this, is because this file initially wasn't set up the best. As you can see by the selection that I have there, the floor is the same object as the walls, as the ceiling, and everything's kind of one piece of geo. And when I first saw it, I thought to myself, like, oh man, you got to clean this up before you light it. And I thought, no, like I wanted to show you all in this walkthrough that even with geometry that's a little more difficult to work with and not easy to texture, there's still a way to light it, and there's still a way to light it quickly. Because like I said, I know a lot of you are under tight deadlines with your jobs or with your school. So we want to demonstrate that. So knowing that I wanted to make this like a creepy scene, I went ahead and dropped the level of the water down. So it's just like, I just wanted like just like a trickle of water in the pool so we can kind of pick up the graffiti on the sides a little bit. And then once you lowered the water, I went ahead and removed the pool dividers because it didn't really make much sense to have them suspended up above it. Visually, I figured that would just be a little bit distracting. So I went ahead and deleted those. And now we can kind of look around the scene and start to get an idea of how I wanted to lay out the camera and where I generally wanted the light to come from. And as you can see, we've got windows on one side and interior on the other side. So I really wanted to have the windows be in the scene and light coming through and light shining through and really just kind of hitting this one way and just light kind of going across the back wall and hitting the back, so we can kind of all see everything from this angle. So I went ahead and created a camera, and what we're going to do is, well, first you want to name the camera, and then what you're going to do is I went ahead and I'm looking through it now, and I just kind of want to position it back in that corner we were just looking through, and just kind of want to show you that even I kind of fumble with this and finick with this. So one of the things I do is I select an object in the scene and just hit F to kind of be my framing element so I can focus in on that. And then I just kind of position the camera in the corner. Sometimes like it's a little tough, so I'll switch back to the perspective angle. And then I will zoom in on our render cam here and just kind of position that back in place. The one thing is with these large scenes, sometimes you want to scale up the camera. It actually doesn't matter the final output, it's just the icon. It's just what's, it's just like a UI thing. So you don't have to worry about the size of the camera in the scene influencing the way it looks. Okay, so now we're looking back through it. We're kind of, we're positioning it kind of low to the ground. As you can see now, we're a little bit tight in, so we can't really get a good sense of the overall scene. So one of the things that we want to do is we want to pull back this focal length or make the focal length shorter, which actually makes it more wide angle. This is like insanely wide. This is a little bit more telephoto. So think of like the smaller the number, the more angle you can see from the camera, like the wider it gets. So I just wanted to widen that out a little bit, so we can pick up the entire scene. We can see all the windows. We can get everything coming in that way. Now we can get the light coming in from the side, and also just to verify our aspect ratio, I also like to look through the resolution gate so we can kind of see exactly what we're going to be seeing there. We can adjust the aspect ratio if we want. As you saw from the TDU submissions on the Mr. Bean example, there's a lot you can do just with aspect ratio. You can make things more landscapey to make it more cinematic. You can make it vertical to feel like a still photograph or something. And there's a lot that can be done there. There's a lot that you can play with there. So one thing I'm doing here is like once you get the camera in a position that you want it, you're going to want to lock the attributes in place. I raised it up too much. So what you want to do is I went ahead and unlocked these, and we're going to lower this back down into place. And now you're going to want to go ahead and lock it back up, because I don't know about you all, but I'm a little bit clumsy, and there'll be times when I'm looking through the camera and I'll accidentally tumble it a little bit, and you can never get it back to the way it was, especially if you're working with multiple files and you move it in one and then you're rendering out layers and you're trying to comp them back together. It's terrible, because like if the camera's not lined up perfectly, your image will never look right. So in this particular case, I went ahead and unlocked the rotate and left the scale, because I wanted to create kind of a wonky camera angle. So I wanted to just kind of tumble the camera to the side a little bit. And I don't always know if it's the X, Y, or Z doing that. So I go ahead and hop into the perspective and like physically rotate the camera. And then I go back in and I can kind of dial that in a little bit by just kind of like fumbling it around. Like once you see those numbers and how they rotate a little bit, you can get a better understanding of how the camera needs to rotate, or the numeric values of the numbers. Because I didn't want it to be too wonky, but just like a little bit off. So you just want it to feel like if as the viewer, if you set something down in the space, it would just roll away. Like nothing was stable, nothing was flat. There were no 90-degree angles in it, just to kind of create a little bit more of a dynamic scene here. So let's go ahead and okay. So now we have that, and now we're going to jump forward a little bit to talking about the materials that were added to this scene. So for the flags, I just did so all of these are just using AI standard shaders. The flags, I just wanted a little bit of transmission in them. For the water, same deal, a little bit of that blue color shining through. You're not going to see a lot of it in the dark space. So I just start off by adding just some very rough material values. Then I add the lights, and then I go back and I refine the materials. That's kind of my workflow when I'm lighting something, is like simple materials, simple lights, more refined materials, more refined lights. And you kind of go back and forth, because those two things are always kind of working together. The ceiling I wanted to keep dark, so I made that a very dark color. These poles and the ladders, I just made it like a brushed metal color by making the general value dark, and then increasing the metalness value in the AI shader. The ground and walls, I found this pool tile shader or images. So I just mapped some tiles on there as well. So there's this, so there's a little bit of just like a little bit of a tiley pattern going around. I use some normal mapping and bump mapping to get it to read as a little bit more bumpiness. I found a specular map. And by the way, all these textures I picked up from Texture Haven, which you can get to from HDRI Haven. If you're familiar with that, you're getting HDRI images. They've got some really, really beautiful Substance Painter textures that are tileable and that you can use. So I just use this floor one, and as you can see, you can get all the maps here. You can get your ambient occlusion map, your diffuse, your specular, and all those things. So really cool stuff. And these are free. I would recommend donating to him if you're using those. So as you can see in this, I went ahead and used this is the normal map. This is a specular map. And then also like a little bit of a bump map there. So now we're going to go ahead and start adding the lights in. The first one I tried to do was, and this is just like always my default, is to add a sky dome. I always like to, even though it doesn't matter, I always like to make it bigger than the scene because I just don't want this orb, this sphere sitting right in the middle of the scene. So I went ahead and added that because I figured I would try and have that light have all the, I would try and have the sky dome be like a big light source coming in from the outside. So I have this, now I want to turn it off from the camera so I'm not distracted by that bright white area out there in the initial render. And also when we're rendering it out, we want to make sure to have this camera turned off so that the alpha is cut out so that we can add the sky or anything back there in the comp. So now I'm just going to like start dialing in these values a little bit and seeing just how bright I would need to make that sky dome in order to get it looking the way that I wanted to. And one of the things that I realized pretty quickly was that by doing just, like this is a pretty standard thing by having the sky dome all over the place, it's firing rays and they're not really that focused. And what happens is you're going to want to use a light portal to focus those rays of light from the sky dome through the windows. Because again, if we've got light coming in from all over the place hitting it, most of it's not reaching through. So you only want to isolate the light to where the windows are to fire the rays through that. And you do that by adding a light portal after you add the sky dome. So you need to have the sky dome there first, and then the light portal reads the sky dome values, and just like all this is doing is isolating the rays to where you want. So it's still functioning as a sky dome, but only in this one isolated area where it matters, because everywhere else it'll be blocked. So now if you go back to the render cam, you can start to see that it's going to be a little bit cleaner. And anytime, this is a good one. So anytime that you create a new light, make sure that you're closing your render window and restarting the render. I know that it can occasionally work if you just leave them all open, but what I find is that it can mess up the IPR a little bit. The IPR can get a little confused if you create things, especially like a new light. So just shut it down and go from there. So now we've got this light coming in through the window. And again, I wanted to flip back to my reference, and what I'm seeing is like there's a lot of darkness in one area, and then just light kind of coming through one window. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to mimic that. So all I did was I created these cubes, or these like planes, and used those to block 3 of the windows so that light wasn't coming through there. So now it's more similar to the reference. It's just like there's one isolated light source coming through. And and so now it's falling in line with that a little bit more. But see, now that I only have, like normally the sky dome is really great for outdoor scenes or things going on in the nature with like lots of light coming in. But now that we've isolated it down to just like this one square window, I went ahead and deleted the sky dome, deleted the light portal, and I made a area light. And for this, because I figured like this is the most efficient way to do it, instead of having all this light generated here and then pushing it through this light portal, it would be much cleaner and much nicer to have everything just going through an area light that's just outside that window. So again, all you gotta do is position it out the window, scale it up, get it right in the right spot, and then you can just fire the rays isolated through through that window there. Now we can see, there we go. Okay, and skip through it. Let's go back to the render cam. So now we have that. Now we're able to render it out. And of course, it's black because we don't have any exposure. So let's increase that. Let's increase it more. There we go. So now it's cleaner. We have more control. We can actually angle the light against that back wall a little bit more. We can add a little bit of color to it. I wanted to keep the color scheme like bluish, greenish, creepy. Like I said, anything to push this creepy vibe of what's going on in the scene here is really, really nice. So that was like my main goal with setting up the key light or the window light coming in through the outside there. And now what I want to do is I want to just create more of a feeling of the swimming pool, even though the final product is going to be like a little bit creepy and a little bit weird. I want to go ahead and feel like the pool almost has a little bit of a glow to it. And so I do that by creating another area light that matches up with the, that matches just like the shape of the pool itself. And then what I'm going to want to do is just have that light kind of glowing upward and filling in the space a little bit, again, with more of this like aquamarine blue green light. So just want to position it in the spot that's similar to the pool, get it at the height of that water, because again, it was a little bit lower because we just want to like feel it on the walls and and get it going that way. So again, increase the exposure. We're going to want to change the color around. And you can kind of start to feel, yeah, there we go. And we kind of start to feel this light. And like I said, it's going to work as like a fill light, kind of like a bounce light kind of a thing. And that's really what we want. We want it to be like a secondary light source. We don't want it to be like the main light coming in. We want it to feel like a secondary, as like a fill light. Because again, we probably are going to want to go pretty contrasty with our final product. But the way that I like to light and work and composite is I like to keep things a little bit lighter and lifted in the original render, and because you can always pull down the contrast levels and pull down the darkness levels. So as you can see in that last step, I thought the bounce light from the window was a little bit too strong and like too overall, and I kind of wanted to isolate it more to the back half. So I just shrunk down the area light and pushed it back a little bit. After dialing the colors a little bit, I went with a like kind of a more creepy green for the outside, and then you can see a little bit of the blue around the pool area here. So this outside light is more greenish, a little bit warmer, and then the pool light you can kind of just see happening here and then up on the walls a little bit as well. So now I want to talk to you about the other render layers that I made for this, because again, I decided if I was doing this in 24 hours, I didn't have time to like UV map everything and go through and create perfect shaders on everything. So what I want to do first off is I just wanted to create an ambient occlusion shader for everything. So created the shader, applied it to one thing, and then I just applied it to every object in the scene by selecting the whole thing. And then hitting the G button to apply. Once you've applied the ambient occlusion to one shader, you can hit G and it just repeats it for everything. And so that's pretty straightforward. You can dial in the ambient occlusion shaders if you want. The other layers I wanted to do were like dirt passes and graffiti passes and things that can be added in the comp. So you can see the first one I have here. This is a dirt map. And this one is just like, it's pretty much just like a noise filter. So if I wanted to, I didn't have to use a map. I can actually create this using a noise procedure in Maya and just applying it as a mat to the whole thing. Because again, this is something we're going to dial in the comp. So we kind of don't want to worry about how the lighting is affecting it. We just want it to be like universal across the whole thing. And then we'll use the lighting in the other passes to kind of dial it in. So with this noise filter, you can really make it look however you want. And the nice thing about this and doing it this way is that you don't have to worry about a tileable texture. You don't have to worry about seams. It's all procedural. So it just kind of happens fluidly over the whole thing. And you can change your noise type. This is like a nice wispier one, depending on the type of dirtiness or the dirt creation that you want to make. So likewise, I wanted to do the same thing with the graffiti here. So same thing, I wanted to enable the matte. And then I found and or created some graffiti maps. So I just added that to the matte pass and applied that as the file. And now you can see there's just like this graffiti, this tileable graffiti that's kind of everywhere. And so I would render that out as one pass. And I wanted it to be like multiple types of graffiti. So I actually did 4 different ones. So there's the second version there. The third version there is a little more subdued. And then the fourth one is all just like black and white graffiti. So now if we render those out, what you can do in the comp, again, because we're a little bit blessed that we're just using a still frame, is we can kind of piece those together in the comp and use those to build up our final image. So again, we've got all the different graffiti passes there. So now The last pass that I want to create is that caustic, the light shimmer coming up from the pool. So all I did there was I wanted to create like a spotlight because I wanted to run it through a gobo or a cookie cutter, and I do that and the best way to do that is with a spotlight because you can kind of control it, and you can control the width of it. You just have a lot more control of the final output of it. So I position the light at the pool. I make it a very wide code angle because I want it to hit and then just kind of bounce all over the place. And then in Arnold, the way that you get this caustic pattern to read or to get it to filter through is you need to go down. Well, first, of course, you need to create a light kind of, you want to create the light with some exposure so you can start to see it. And then we render it out. You can see there's a little bit of light there on the top. We want to go ahead and expand that out, make it even further so we can kind of see it on the walls. Usually when I'm doing something like this, I just want to jack up the exposure just so we can see it. And again, this is a separate pass, so we don't need to dial it in perfectly. There just needs to be value there that we can use in the comp to ultimately make our final image. So we've got that. Now we've got the spotlight going around. We wanted to increase the radius of the light so that we're not getting super sharp shadows. We don't want that to be too distracting. And now we want to add our Gobo Light. So what we can do is we can scroll down here to our light filters, and then we're going to add a Gobo. And within that Gobo, we want to add a file to the slide map, and that file is going to be a caustic pattern. It's just one that I've used for a while. I forget when I originally got this one, but it's just like a general caustic pattern that I've used. You can kind of see it there in the corner. And it just creates like that like water warble thing. As you can see, it's very, very large. So what I want to do is I want to repeat the UVs so to kind of make it smaller. It makes it tileable, so it's more tiled across the whole thing. And you can really kind of start to dial that into. And again, we don't have to worry about the color of this quite yet. We can add that in the comp and really dial it in. All we want is to make sure that the shape is there, that the exposure is roughly there, so we can start to get the feeling for it a little bit. And that way we can have everything that we need to work with in the comp. So the way that I was doing this is like I was kind of playing with the different angles of the light and whether or not I wanted to focus it around the window or whether I wanted to focus it around the back. And I just kind of wanted to pull everything into this area, into this like back corner, so that the eye of the viewer can really focus in back there. Okay. And then let's see. Let's go ahead and skip ahead here to the comp. So now we're in the comp, and as you can see, we've got the original render. Again, I lifted the pool values a little bit more just so we could have some more values to work with in there. And then the first thing I did was I just kind of, I wanted to saturate it out because after looking at it, I thought it was a little bit too cartoony in color. So I wanted to kind of pull some of that saturation out of there. Again, make it feel a little bit grimier and let the graffiti colors really stand out. So again, because this is a still, I can just create some pockets of the graffiti. So I just rotoed out a certain area, layered it over white, and then multiplied it back over the top. And again, by layering it over the white, you're creating values of 1. So it actually doesn't change the image at all in the areas that it's 1. For this area, I really like these in the foreground because I thought there was just some more detail in them. So I isolated those areas, kind of blurred out the side a little bit, adjusted the saturation slightly, and then pop that guy over the top there. So now you can see there's just a lot more graffiti in the foreground. Now we can add in an additional level of just like some subdued graffiti to kind of fill in the blank spaces around the scene a little bit. Then we've got this dirt map that's going to kind of go through and just make everything nice and kind of gritty and dark. And then we can add in our ambient occlusion, which again, you want to layer that over white so you don't like bombard the background too much and you don't blacken out the background. And now I added a little bit of color to the ambient occlusion as well. So it can add a little bit of like the blues because you just don't want it to make it like super dark. Then we've got our caustic pattern in there. We want to adjust it, add some color, and then add that back over the top. So now we just have a little bit of the caustics bouncing around. From there, this one was kind of goofy. So when I was layering everything together, sometimes the alpha channel got a little out of whack. So this is the alpha channel. So all I do is I add a copy channel, and I take the original alpha and I swap it out to what we have. So we have a nice clean alpha towards the end. I did some color adjusting there, layered it over just like this bright white because there's really no values back in the outside world. I just wanted that to be super bright. I used a little bit of light wrap around the edges there, and then layered that over the top. The next step that I wanted to do was I wanted to add just like some light rays or just like some fog in there a little bit. So what I did was I rendered out the depth pass out of Arnold, and I used the grade node to pull out actually, let me pause this for a sec. So just because I want to explain this. So I've got the Z depth pass. And again, I used this shuffle node to shuffle out the depth pass. And then what I did is I created a grade node. And what you want to do with the grade node is use the black point and the white point to pull out these Z depth values in the Z depth pass. So if you look down there, you can see that the alpha numbers range from like 200 to 3,500, or like, and you can kind of roll over where you want it. So I wanted to start a little bit halfway through, and when I roll over there, it's about 800. So let's go back to that. Sorry. So you can see here, there's about 300 there, and where I wanted to start there is right around 800. So I changed the black point value to 800, and then the furthest away point in the room is like 3,500. So I set the white point to be back behind it. So there's a little bit of variation in there too. The problem with that is that only affects the RGB. The alpha is still pure white. So what I wanted to do is I created another shuffle node and set that to all red values. So now when I look at the alpha, it's the exact same as the RGB. We want to add a little color to that. And then we want to go ahead and plus that over the scene. So now we just have like a little bit of haze, but the haze isn't like uniform. It's not like as much in the foreground as it is in the background. It's just a little bit over the top. And then we'll add a little bit of glow. I'll add a little bit of vignetting. And then, so it's just like a roto shape, blurred out, inverted, and using that to grade it down a little bit to, again, help us focus in a little bit. And then I always add one last shuffle node to make sure that the alpha coming out of the final image is pure white. And then I go ahead and render that guy out. Oh, let me pause this for a second because I'm seeing a question. Sorry. It's focused. In which order should we use in Nuke, Atmo, ground raised, light wrap, depth of field? So anything. Okay. Let me finish this up, and then I'll come back to that. It's a really, really good question. But let me just get just a little bit left here. So again, I wanted to kind of go through this last step here, which is because again, this is a still image. I have some wiggle room to play with it in Photoshop, so I just adjusted the levels. I wanted to add like a little bit more contrast to it, so I just pulled down those darks just a touch, and then there were a couple little things that were bugging me about this. When I showed them for feedback, one of the notes that I got was that these little white lights in the ceiling that were picking up some reflections were a little distracting. Again, I could go through and adjust the shader and spend however much time re-rendering, but instead I just went into Photoshop and I just kind of I painted them out. So again, there's so much chaos out there that you can really get away with a lot of wiggle room. And again, because this is a still, you can get away with a lot as well. And again, like this isn't the type of thing that you're probably used to seeing in a course where they teach you like this dirty tactic of getting things done. But again, my focus was getting this done in 24 hours and just working quickly and working efficiently so that I didn't have to re-render everything. It's like, what's the fastest way to get the solution? So you can see that kind of cleaned that up a little bit. And that's pretty much that. So that's the final version there. And let's see. Oh, and then, okay. And then there's always a way of, you can add a little bit of, you blur it and then you can screen it back over the top of itself. I always do this just to get a little bit more glowiness, happiness, just like that last little bit of touch in there, just to make that the way that we want. Because I thought that the glowiness that we added in the original wasn't quite enough. So I wanted to isolate a little bit more glowiness just around that window area as well. So now this giant circle is just me erasing everything that's not right around that back window. So that is the final touch. So now we've got the final image, all done with, like I said, within 24 hours. So let me hop back over, and if you all have any questions, I will be glad to answer those. So I'll start with Calabazas there. Let me just go ahead and take that off the screen so we can see more of me. Okay, so your question was, in what order do you do Atmo, God Rays, Light Wrap, and DOF? So the thing I always ask myself is, I kind of go through this like step-by-step process, right? It's like, if the element is in the camera, if it's like a lens flare or something that's happening in the camera, it goes way at the end, because that is affecting everything in the scene if it's happening on the lens. Anything that, and that's depth of field too. But the problem with that is that when you're building up your render layers and then adding the depth of field at the end, what can happen is you can get some weird edge wrapping issues or edge blurring issues with the various objects. So what I usually do is I will use the depth of field at the very end just to establish the look, and then I go back at the very end and I'll add the depth of field to the individual layers. So I will generally do the depth of field. Let me try and think. So I'll do the depth of field in the individual layers first, and then I do the light wrap based on those depth of field values. And then for the Atmo and the God Rays, I will also do that before the depth of field. So it goes Atmo, and then we want to blur the Atmo with the depth of field. So that's all blurring back together. And then you build that into the layers as they're piecing together, and then there's the light wrap. So so it's pretty much Atmo, DOF, light wrap, if that makes sense. So I always think about, like, if you just have to try and think about it logically. And again, there's no right or wrong way to do this. I'm sure artists do it many different ways, but I always like to do the layering as late in the game as I possibly can, so that I can keep the pixels as pure as they can be. So that's it. Once again, a huge congratulations to Antonio. We were, and actually all you guys, because like I said, again, the goal of this isn't the prize. It's the fact that you all have amazing work now that you can add to your demo reel. And I can tell you with assurance that every single work that was created is demo reel worthy. The students that submitted that we've worked with for a long time, I can say that's some of the best stuff I've ever seen you guys make. And so we're really, really enthusiastic about it. We are, I'm sure we'll be doing more of these challenges in the future, because like I said, they just made me very happy. So we'll continue doing that. If you all have ideas or suggestions in the future, send them our way. We're always open to hearing from it, because we want TDU to be a place where you all are learning the way that you want to and what works best for you. So if there's ever any suggestions for a challenge, for a course, for if there's a scene that you're trying to light and you can't figure it out, if you want to send it over, I'll be happy to light it and do one of these walkthroughs with it. But yeah, we're just extremely excited to have all of you. Like I said, I know I went over time a little bit today. I apologize, but there's a lot to go over, a lot of good stuff. Thank you all again, and I will see you all very soon. In the meantime, happy lighting, everyone.